In my opinion, this new mini PC is one of the best values on the market right now when it comes to gaming, emulation, work, or play, and this thing kind of came out of nowhere. What's going on, everybody? It's etaprime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Minisforum UM760 Slim mini PC. I've been doing some testing with this, and I'm actually really impressed given the form factor and price point here. Now, this doesn't have all the bells and whistles as their other higher-end UM series. This is the Slim model, so they're trying to keep the price down. We don't have a screen, we don't have any occuling, but what we do get here is a pretty powerful little APU, one that I actually haven't tested on the channel. Plus, we've got USB 4, so if you did want to add an eGPU, you definitely could. This is constructed of plastic, so they could keep that price down, and we only get one 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port around back, but it's not a bad looking little mini PC. I mean, it's kind of plain Jane, sit right on the desk, fit right in. Inside of the box, obviously, we're going to get the UM760. We get a mounting system, so it can go on the back of a monitor, under a desk, on a wall. HDMI cable, and our small form factor 120 watt power supply. Love the fact that we've got these really small power supplies now with these mini PCs. I gotta mention this because it was the very first thing I tried with this mini PC. I wanted to run this in single cable operation mode, powering it over USB 4 and also sending video back. Unfortunately, you will need this power supply to get this thing up and running. When it comes to I/O, up front here, we've got two full-size USB 3.2 ports and a 3.5mm audio jack. On each side, I was really hoping for like an SD card reader. Unfortunately, we don't have anything over here, but moving around back, we've got our power input, 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port, full-size HDMI, full-size DisplayPort, USB 4, and two USB 2.0 ports. In total, we can do 3 displays out utilizing HDMI, DisplayPort, and that USB 4. Getting inside here to upgrade the storage or RAM is really easy. You do have to remove the feet, but luckily they do send a couple extras just in case they won't re-stick. 4 screws, we can pull the bottom right off. It does have a built-in M.2 cooling system, so it's got a built-in fan here. And luckily, we have 2 M.2 slots. It supports PCIe 4.0 M.2 SSDs, and it utilizes dual-channel SODIMM DDR5, up to 96 gigabytes. And of course, when it comes to the specs for the new Minisforum UM760 Slim for the APU, they opted to use the AMD Ryzen 7 7640HS. I have not tested this on the channel, believe it or not. 6 cores, 12 threads. We've got a base clock of 4.3 and a boost up to 5 gigahertz. Built-in Radeon 760M iGPU based on RDNA 3. We've got 8 CUs instead of the 780M's 12 CUs, and this will boost up to 2600 megahertz. We can add 96 gigs of DDR5 at 5600 MHz, 2 M.2 PCIe 4.0 M.2 slots, Wi-Fi 6E, Bluetooth 5.3, and this is running Windows 11. I completely understand that some people may be let down that this isn't using something with that 780M iGPU, but when it comes to real-world gaming, I'm really surprised by what this thing can do. It's actually not that far off. And the price on this over on Minisforum's website with 16 gigabytes of RAM and a 1 terabyte M.2 SSD is $349. So you get a full-fledged Windows 11 PC ready to go for $350. And yeah, there are cheaper mini PCs out there, like something with an N100. You can find some for around $120, but this is offering so much more performance than the N100. I do think at this price point, a lot of people are going to be really interested in this thing. I personally wanted to take a quick look at the BIOS, and we do have the Minisforum Visual BIOS. In Setup, from Advanced, we've got access to most settings here, but there is a few things that I noticed were kind of grayed out or blocked off here. So if we go to our AMD CBS, SMU Common Options, usually we've got a TDP setting right here, and from Smart Shift Control, Manual, so we can still set our TDP limit from here, but I'm going to leave it just like it is, see what this thing does. Auto, we'll go back here. Other than that, everything else does seem to be unlocked here. We can set the VRAM limit on that iGPU if we want to. Secure boot. So yeah, if you want to do a little bit of tuning, you definitely can from the BIOS. So far, everything's been working fine here with Windows 11. I've got everything updated, ready to go. As you can see, Ryzen 5 7640HS, 6 cores, 12 threads. And of course, we've got the Radeon 760M. 2 gigs of available VRAM, but it will allocate more, up to 16 here. Now, the first thing I wanted to do was check the TDP on this, and we also got to check the clock on that iGPU, because online I've seen some people state that it goes up to 2800 megahertz, some people say that it's 26. But the first thing here is the TDP. Again, we took a look at the BIOS. We can set it, but out of the box, we're right there at around 50 watts. You could also use a third-party app if you wanted to, but I think 50 watts on the 6-core, 12-thread APU is going to be plenty. Now, we got to check out the clock on this GPU. And yeah, 2600 megahertz. I was kind of hoping that this one was going to boost up to 28, but we'll just have to see what it does. Either way, we've got plenty of power here for everyday normal use case scenarios like web browsing, email checking, document editing. You want to do some photo editing on this, it's more than possible with the UM760 Slim. Heading over to the website, everything loads up nice and quickly here. I wanted to check out some 4K video playback. So we'll find something 4K 60 HDR. We'll do this one here. So we'll full screen it, make sure we're at 4K, stats for nerds, and this should play right through. I mean, I don't think we're going to run into any issues when it comes to 4K video playback, whether you want to stream it from your favorite site, YouTube, Netflix, HBO, or do some native playback from an external drive or internal drive. This would make a great little in-home video server. Now, I wouldn't go throwing, 8 streams at 4K at it, but this will definitely handle 2 at 60 simultaneously. So far, not too bad as an everyday desktop PC. This will definitely get a lot of people by. And the next thing I want to do is run some benchmarks. Then I want to get into some gaming because that's where this thing was actually really impressive, believe it or not. First up, Geekbench 6, single core, 2517, multi, 10689. And this multi-score is definitely much lower than the Ryzen 7840U, and that's because we've only got 6 cores and 12 threads as opposed to 8 cores and 16 threads over there. But single core is keeping up. Now we're going to check out some GPU benchmarks with 3D Mark. Night Raid coming in with a 26,310, and the 780M right here is around 28,000, so we're not that far off. We've got 8 compute units as opposed to the 780M's 12 compute units, and the last one I ran here was Time Spy. We got a 2,810, and just to kind of give you an idea, around 3,200 on the 780M in a mini PC with 5,600 megahertz RAM. So when it comes to these synthetics, it's not that far off. I actually thought that it would be much, much lower, but now it's time to get into some real-world gaming. First game we have here is a bit easier to run. Fallout 4 1080p medium settings. This is the Steam version, so it is the updated version. Bethesda did a bunch of updates to this. I thought we'd have to drop this down to low settings, and I know it's an older one, but still on these iGPUs, some of them can struggle with Fallout 4. But with this system here, we're seeing an average of 72 FPS. Since Nixxes added frame generation to most of their PC ports, we've been seeing some awesome performance on these iGPUs. This one's no different. 1080p medium frame gen on. We're seeing an average of around 68 FPS. On the 780M with the same RAM, we're seeing an average of around 74 FPS over there. So, I mean, it's really not that far off. And we are working with less compute units here, but it's still keeping up pretty well. Hogwarts Legacy, I did have to drop this down to 900p. We're at low with FSR set to performance. So going from 1080 to 900, I mean, there's a dramatic jump in the FPS. At 1080, same settings, we're seeing an average of around 58, but just dropping it down to 900p, we're on up to around 78 on average with this game. If you don't mind a couple drops here and there, or if you're using a FreeSync display, then you can have a really good time with it at 1080p. You knew it was coming. Forza Horizon 5, 1080p, medium, no FSR. Looking good, but this is one of those where the 780M kind of does trump it, because with these same settings over there, we're seeing an average of around 98 FPS. On this setup here, average of 80. Horizon Forbidden West, this is one of the harder games to run on an iGPU. Even the 780M or the ROG Ally X with basically the same iGPU does struggle with this. We're at 900p FSR set to performance, frame gen on. By the end of this, I had an average of 64 FPS, but as you saw, there are some times where it dips under 60. And finally, Cyberpunk 2077, 900p low with FSR set to auto. With FSR 3 set to performance at 1080, we're seeing an average of around 65 FPS, but I wanted a little more out of it, and I still think it looks pretty good like this at 900p, and I'm pretty sure with FSR set to auto at 900p, we're right there around the balanced preset. So yeah, we're seeing around the same kind of FPS here with FSR set to auto at 900p as we do with it set at 1080 and FSR at performance. But all the games that I tested are really playable on this little PC. Last thing I wanted to talk about here was total system power consumption from the wall. While doing my testing, I've got these plugged into a kilowatt meter. At idle, this is pulling 12 watts, and while gaming, jumps up to around 73 watts in total. Another thing here is CPU temps. While gaming, our CPU temp average was 74 degrees Celsius, and at the end of all of my testing here, the maximum we hit was 88. So we didn't hit thermal throttle with this unit, and it's not that loud. Over on their website, they state that this does 35 decibels in performance mode. It can ramp up a little higher than that, but it doesn't sound like a jet engine. Overall, really impressed with the performance this thing's putting out. Going into it, I actually didn't know what to expect. I kind of thought that we'd get a lot less than something with the 780M iGPU, but I was totally wrong. I mean, this thing is really trucking along. If you want to see a USB 4 eGPU tested with this, just let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in learning a little more, I'll leave links to Minisforum's website in the description. But that's going to wrap it up for my first look at the Minisforum UM760 Slim. And like always, thanks for watching.